Welcome to Understand. This is Jordan with SciTools. Have you ever needed to pull metrics out of Understand, maybe for a report, a dashboard, or just to track trends over time? Understand gives you a couple ways to do that, depending on what you need. In this video, we'll cover two workflows: exporting metrics for your entire project through the GUI and using the Python API to export metrics for a specific entity kind, say all the classes in your project. So if you want to export metrics for your whole project, Understand makes this really straightforward right from the GUI. You can go to Metrics in the top level menu and select Export Metrics. Or if you already have the metrics browser open, just click the export icon there. I will go ahead and show you that. Metrics, browse metrics, and it will be this icon right here. Either way, this brings up a dialog where you can choose which metrics you want to include. You don't have to export everything. You can select a specific subset of metrics if that's all you need. So there are also some output settings here, like naming options and destination, so you can tailor the export to your own workflow. So for a full project export, this is the easiest and best path. But what if you don't want metrics for the entire project? What if you only cared about, say, classes? If that's the case, Understand's GUI can get you partway there. So first, if you open the entity filter, it's under View Entity Filter. Ours is already open. So here in the dropdown of this panel, we could select classes. Now we've got a filtered list of just the class entities in our project. Next, if we open the metrics browser as we did before under Metrics, Browse Metrics, or View Metrics Browser, and then we make sure that this sync button is checked or enabled. So if this is on, when we select an entity in the entity filter, the metrics browser automatically updates to show that entity's metrics. So this is a great way to browse and inspect metrics for individual classes, but if you actually want to export these metrics for all classes in a structured format, then the GUI doesn't have a one-click option for that. This is where the Python API really shines. So here I have a simple Python API script that I wrote that does exactly what we just talked about. It exports metrics for a specific entity kind to a CSV file. So before we look at the code, let's talk about how to actually run it. Understand ships with its own bundled Python interpreter called UPython. You'll find this in the same directory as the Understand executable. So to run our script, we navigate to that directory and invoke it with UPython, passing it our script path, the path to the Understand project file, and then any options we want. So here's what that looks like on my machine. This is what the command looks like for me. Now the first argument is the path to our script. So we've named it exportmetrics.py and it lives in the desktop directory. The second is the path to our und.project file. Right now we're just using a sample project, get ahead. Then we've got two optional flags. -O to specify an output CSV file, and -K to specify the entity kind. So in our case, we're looking for the entity type class and trying to ignore unresolved or unknown entities. Okay, now let's walk through the code. So up at the top, we import Understand. That's the Python API module that lets us interact with Understand databases. So we also import argparse for handling our command line arguments and CSV for writing the output file. Next, we set up our argument parser right here. This is what lets us pass in the database path, the output file, and the entity kind from the command line. The database path is required. Everything else has sensible defaults. So if you don't pass -O, it just prints to the console. And if you don't pass -K, it defaults to classes, unresolved, unknown. So then on line 19, we are going to just open the Understand database. This is the core API call that gives us access to everything in the project. Then we query for entities. The db.ents method takes a kind filter string. It's the same kind strings that you'd use elsewhere in Understand. We also do a quick check to make sure we actually got results back. Next, we have a very important step. We collect all the available metric names across every entity of this kind, and we use a set to avoid duplicates since different entities might report slightly different metrics. Then we sort them so our output columns are consistent. So then moving on, if the user specified an output file, we write a CSV. The first row is the header entity, followed by all the metric names. Then for each entity, we call ent.metric with the full list of metric names, which returns a dictionary of metric values. So we write the entity's long name followed by each metric value. If no output file was specified, we just print to the console instead. So here we call ent.metric with each metric name individually, and then when you pass a single string instead of a list, it returns the value directly instead of a directory. We skip any metrics that come back as none to keep the output clean. And finally, we just close the database when we're done. And that's the whole script. A few lines of code and you've got a flexible, reusable tool for exporting metrics for any entity kind in your project. So to recap, if you need a full project metrics export, the GUI has you covered. Just use export metrics from the metrics menu or from the metrics browser. But if you need something more targeted like metrics for all classes or a specific entity kind, the Python API is perfect for giving you that kind of flexibility. So really quickly, let's just take a look at the output of the script we just wrote. So if we run the script, we see that there were 387 entities that were written to mymetrics.csv. So now if we go find the file and open it, here we go. Here we can see all of the metrics that applied to the classes and all of the classes that have been written to the file. Thank you for watching. To learn more about metrics or any other feature within Understand, visit support.scitools.com.